There. From Brooklyn, hello, Nick. Are you there?
Bob, you're great. You are great. You are the star of WABC. You are the star of David. Mr. Rosengrant, you are the best. The best, the best.
Abba Van Gogh, you jerk. You anti-Semitic creep. Tom, you're on WABC. Hello.
Good afternoon. Before I went to sleep last night, I heard the late-breaking news on the Super Bowl, and the whole thing in a nutshell is that the NFL owners made the decision not to have the Super Bowl in '93 in Phoenix. First, it was the...
it's Paul Tagliabue's fault.
Yeah, he's the one that...
They ratified what he said.
Right, they ratified what he said, but the owners made the final decision last night not to hold it in Phoenix because of the King holiday. Now, what gets me is, here we go now, I bring up Lincoln all the time for some reason, making a good comparison about Americans. We have 39 states that don't recognize Lincoln's birthday. I don't know if people realize that.
Yeah, but that's
I mean,
that's true. They don't realize.
Lincoln with King as Americans.
Well, of course I wouldn't compare him. King couldn't shine Lincoln's shoes.
Well, Washington D.C. doesn't recognize Lincoln's birthday.
Yeah.
You know,
Tom, you've said this the last time you called, and you said it well the last time, and you're saying it just as well this time, and I thank you very much. Harry, you're on WABC. Hello.
How you doing, Bob? I'm a first-time caller, and I just wanted to say about this guy that got killed by the police. Well, you know, there's a lot of circumstances that are involved here that we don't know about. If this guy had a gun, you know, I mean, even the people in L.A., okay? This man was driving 100-plus miles an hour. Every one of them cops that was chasing this guy, okay, were putting their lives on the line. Now, if you caught a guy that went, you know, I don't know if you ever went over 100 miles an hour. I cannot even dream about doing it. But every one of them cops put their lives on the line, and they carried it a little bit too far. I'm not saying it was right, but two wrongs don't make a right, too. But, you know, every one of them cops had wives, families, kids.
Well, it was no... Look, save yourself from making a fool of yourself by carrying on this way. Because what you are doing is sounding very foolish. That has nothing to do with it. Once they had the guy, once he was prone on the ground, once he was totally defenseless, was it necessary for 56 blows? Of course it wasn't.
Of course not.
Okay.
I'm not saying it was right.
Well then what are you saying?
They got carried away with themselves.
They got carried away? Well then
and
they're not
paid
then they're not professionals. I want a professional police force.
Of course, Bob. You are right. And I'm just saying that, you know, there's a lot of times there's a lot of things that we don't know about, and we don't have all the circumstances. You know, so...
What circumstances do we need when we see with our own eyes a guy lying on the ground? They kept beating him and beating him and beating him.
You're right, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
You're right.
The March of the Cabones continues on the Bob Grant Show. Let's say hello to Pete, calling from Long Island. Hello, Pete.
Yes, Bob, I'm a detective in New York City. I can't speak for the four officers because I don't know them, but I do know Sergeant Goldblatt. I can't possibly conceive of him, professional, quiet, decent, getting involved and letting his men go wild on this fellow. It's just inconceivable to me. I think these men got indicted because the situation out in L.A. and the district attorney just ran scared and pushed for the indictment. As the judge said, you can indict a ham sandwich.
Could very well be that the case, and I predicted this last week. I said there are many bad aspects to the case in Los Angeles, one of them being there's going to be an overreaction all over the country. Now, this could very well be one of it. Each case has to be judged on its own merits. And
if I can offer a theory.
This case seems to have different aspects than the case in Los Angeles.
If I can offer a theory, just a theory. This fellow was slamming his face against the ground. It's quite possible that one of the officers trying to restrain him from hurting himself further pulled his neck back, and it could have happened that way. Purely accidental.
It could have, but you see, there's this suspicion now on the part of the public, thanks to the videotape of the Los Angeles situation. And the perception now is, aha, even amongst a lot of people who heretofore had been, and who still are basically pro-police, there's a feeling of, young guys like that, 22-year-old guys, don't die for nothing.
Goldblatt never would have let it happen. Impossible.
Well, you're not the only one who says that about Barry Goldblatt. I don't know whether you know him personally, as you claim, or whether you happen to read the reports, but he does have an excellent record. He's highly thought of.
I just always wonder why it isn't Johnny America who seems to get involved and who'll get killed. It's always these people that the police don't want to be there in the first place. They're doing their job, and now they get indicted for their efforts. My ex-partner has always told me, he's out of the job, he says, he said, if you do your job today and you go out there and do anything, you should be put in a straitjacket. And I think you've said it yourself, too. Do your 20, get out, and forget about it.
That's right. No, I have told a lot of people on the job, I said, look, I'm not supposed to say this, but if you look the other way, if it's a marginal case, I wouldn't blame you. Do your 20 years, survive, be able to take care of your wife and kids and enjoy them growing up. Society doesn't deserve some of you guys. We're not worthy of you guys. Thank you for the call.
I thank you, sir.
Keith, you're on WABC. Hello.
Good afternoon. I was just wondering, we have a lot of problems here in New York, especially with the economy. And these socialist policies that are driving us to down the road of ruin, actually, seem to me to be, more important than what may or may not have happened in Los Angeles, although that is not unimportant. What has happened there is brutal, and really they ought to deal with that. But it seems to me that that's Los Angeles' problem. We have a problem with that we should work on. And as far as economics go, it seems to me that that's what we ought to be really focused on right now. And it seems to me that all we're really doing is just throwing more tax dollars into the rat hole.
Well, there's an old saying, you don't throw good money after bad. And that's really what we're doing. But as long as you have a one party entrenched, and that party happens to be a very ultra-liberal Democrat wing of the ultra-liberal wing of the Democrat Party, then you are going to have socialist mentality. As a matter of fact, if you analyze David Dinkins, he's not an old-time Democrat. David Dinkins is a socialist. He really is.
Oh, I agree completely.
I mean, he
may
not know it. He may not know that that's what he is, but that's what he is.
I think most socialists here in the United States don't realize that they're actually espousing a philosophy that's virtually bankrupt. And until we stand up and actually let them know that we understand where they're coming from even better than they do and throw them out, we're really not going anywhere.
Yeah, what do you think of these bums? They look like able-bodied guys. They all look like they could be from some basketball team or some boxers. They look like they're very able-bodied. There they were protesting cuts in the governor's budget, and they said they were cutting the poor folk being cut too much, so they smashed windows, created several $1,000s worth of damage. Why do we put up with these bums anyway?
I really don't know why we put up with them. I'm frankly sick and tired of my tax dollars being spent to subsidize these people, number one. I'm also tired of my tax dollars paying for the police it takes to keep them under control. It's really getting out of hand. If somebody doesn't stand up and make a stand about these problems and this ridiculous protesting about every little thing, well, I'll tell you, their cuts that they're scared of are my tax dollars that I'm scared of. Me and my wife, we pay over $220 a week in taxes out of our check. We're tired of it.
Well, Keith, you have a good reason to be tired. This morning on the National Business Report, they said that the people who would like to leave, business people who want to leave New York, is increasing. Why do they want to leave? Well, because the climate for doing business here gets worse and worse and worse. And how does this grab you? The governor wants to impose a new, what they call a Twinkie tax on snack foods like popcorn, potato chips, and cookies to raise $20 million a year.
It won't raise $20 million a year. First of all, it'll cut down the actual buying of these goods. And you know what I think really the problem is here? The media has gotten away with discrediting supply-side economics. And actually, they weren't discredited. They were simply abandoned.
And what is this? A 7-day room and board charge for work-release inmates designed to raise $3 million. I'm not quite sure what that is. Work-release programs are very dangerous programs anyway. Hey, listen, Keith, I appreciate your call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I enjoy your show.
Now on WABC, let's say hello to Ed checking in from Long Island. Hello, Ed.
Hello, Bob. Good afternoon. Bob, I'd like to talk about the New York State economy. I just moved here from another state. What gets me is, why in New York is it illegal by the New York State Constitution to have voter initiatives, a voter referendum? I think that would be a way of the New York citizens telling the government they're tired of tax increases. And they could probably put together something like Prop 3 they had in Massachusetts.
Well, the state of New York, as the state of Pennsylvania, state of New Jersey, state of Connecticut, and several other states here in the East, do not allow initiative in referendum. In order to get initiative in referendum embodied in our state constitution would require 2 successive votes by the legislature. In other words, this state legislature in both houses would have to vote for it, sign it by the governor. And then the next session would have to vote for it and again be signed by the governor. Very difficult to do, to get it done just once, let alone to get it done twice. Most politicians, when they are speaking in public, say, yes, we're for initiative in referendum. But don't you believe it? Most politicians in New York, in New Jersey, in Connecticut are opposed to initiative in referendum. As one senator, state senator in New York, now deceased, said, quote, we're afraid the public would make mischief, unquote. Well, that senator really didn't believe in democracy then if he thinks that referenda initiative is making mischief. Actually, what I think it is participatory democracy.
Yeah, it's helped a lot of states. You know, they moan and groan that, you know, if they cut back on this money for an initiative, you know, the government will go down, you know, we won't be able to provide services, but that's not the way it happens. Governments function as normal, you know, with less money. You know, as it was in Colorado. Proposition 3 was voted down in Massachusetts, but it scared the politicians in Massachusetts enough that now William Weld is cutting back on government spending. We need something like that here in New York, I think, and then the government would make more sense.
Well, it isn't so much that you send a message in general to cut back on spending, because the governor of the state of New York is forced to do just that. He wouldn't dare ask for even more taxes than he already has. However, what initiative and referendum does do is allow the public to have an idea, member of the public to have an idea, and to see what his fellow citizens think of that idea. It isn't just a question of cutting taxes. That isn't the only issue at stake here. It's every issue, and I thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Marty, Bob Grant with you on WABC. We don't have our newsbreaker yet, do we? No? Okay. Marty, we'll talk to you until we have to go to our newsbreaker line. Marty calling from Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Well, this is very brief. I'd just like to know if you've read the 2-page George Will column in Newsweek this week concerning the 60s, specifically a movie about a rock group called The Doors.
Yeah, The Doors. Listen, I tell you what, I'd like to talk to you about it. Why don't you just stay on the line and listen to Alan Simpson when we talk to him right now, okay?
No problem.
All right, thank you. We'll get back to Marty, but right now let's go to our newsbreaker line, extending down to the nation's capital, representing the state of Wyoming, United States Senator Alan Simpson. And, Senator, I read your letter to the New York Times in which you were very gracious in your remarks concerning having regretted calling Peter Arnett a sympathizer to Saddam Hussein. What really inspired you to write this article?
Well, you know, I like the give and take of politics, and I can get in there and belt it around as good as anybody, but I think the thing that, the poignant thing to me was the letter from the son, Andrew Arnett, or a column where he wrote about his family and his mother and his uncle and her feeling of pain and being smeared. And, you know, even though I, you know, can get the gloves on and do all the stuff you do in politics, I have never been called McCarthy or sleaze or slime or smearer. And so, you know, you learn fast. Even after 59 years, you take on anybody in the media, and boy, you'll get your lumps, you'll get your old head battered in. But it was that I just thought, you know, that's you know, very bad. That's hurt. And, you know, it's kind of hurts to have to do that, but I guess you just lay it out, and that's what I did.
Well, you know, people get cynical about politicians, and first thought that would come to mind would be, well, I guess he feels that tactically this is a good political maneuver. But that wasn't really what motivated your letter to the Times, was it?
Well, you see, I'm a legislator. I'm not here to run for president or vice president. Those are things that don't burn in my bosom. I love to legislate, and I love to mess around with things that are filled with emotion, fear, guilt, or racism. Things like immigration, things like the clean air, things like the environment, where somebody's always just steaming up the mirrors, and try to get into it and deal with fact. And I guess the thing, I would have rocked along on this until I saw the letter from the Sun. And when you have 3 children of your own and who would stick up for you in the same situation, I know that sounds corny and all the rest of it, but that was enough for me. And then I just sat down and composed this. I still feel very strongly about Peter Arnett and reporting from behind enemy lines, and I think that's absurd. I wouldn't change a word of that.
Senator, prior to Andrew Arnett's article, which I believe appeared March 13th, and prior, of course, to your response, people had been talking about you. I notice on many of the talk shows, particularly that originate from the nation's capital, you were being singled out by certain people in the media. Were you getting pressure? Did CNN, for example, send you a letter? Did you get a letter from Ted Turner or the other Turner or anybody?
No. In fact, I sat down with the CNN people. I said, they said, what were you saying about Peter Arnett? I said, well, I said what I said, and they said, well, could we come in and visit with you? So I visited with their person here, Bill Headlight, believe it or not. Headline, Bill Headline. And we visited. I told him that I thought it was repugnant, what the coverage of watching that from behind enemy lines when you're hosted by an enemy government who's, putting you to bed at night and getting you up in the morning, and that I guess it's just a generation gap. We had a word for that back when I was a kid in the Second World War. We were taught loose lips sink ships and things like that, and to see it happen, and having been in the infantry and watching people talk about where things were landing, hell, we used to call those people forward observers. So that was the part that got me, but no. And then they said, maybe you were a stalking horse for the president. I can tell you I never spoke to the president about those remarks. I made them about Peter Arnett, and the painful and unfortunate part was the part about his wife and her brother, and it was clearly brought to a great focus when I saw those remarks by the Sun.
Well, apparently he's leaving that wife for a younger model anyway, which is neither here nor there. But Senator, as long as I have you on the line,
sure.
Let me tell you how much I admired your conduct. I was going to say performance, but that would give some people the wrong idea. Your conduct during the Robert Bork lynching. As a matter of fact, Robert Bork was a guest on this program 2 weeks ago, and we talked about you and a few other members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And you said never again will we confirm a judge. That you said something to the effect that it's changed everything forever. You remember that?
Yes, I do. I sure do.
Apparently the same group that got Robert Bork doesn't want Judge Rice-Camp to be the 11th Circuit Court. What's going on there?
Well, it's the same stuff. They're trying to portray him as some ugly racist because he belonged to a club. He said he didn't know the membership requirements of the club. He said that they admitted Jews, and as far as he knew, blacks. Apparently there were no blacks in the club, and so they're hanging everything on this, and then also some statements that he made out of context with regard to the use of police dogs to protect police officers and so on, and there's a lot of that. But this is coming from a group, really, they could solve all their problems if they just went out and elected a Democrat, liberal president of the United States who would appoint the kind of people they want to the federal district court, and that's where they fail. So every once in a while they get a Roland Boyle and they target somebody, and it happens to be Rice-Camp. But I think we can get him confirmed.
I have a better idea. The better idea is for your side to get back control of the Senate and make big inroads in the House in 1992. How about it?
Well, it's a cheeriest note of the day. I mean, that's an absolute thrill. Let me just say one thing on that other. You know what's an interesting thing about the relationship with the press? I've been treated very fairly by them. In fact, I have the feeling that they've let me get away with too much. And so I said to my wife about 3 years ago, I said, wait till I stub my toe and just make that one error, because they've been schmoozing with me. And when the time comes and I drop, you watch what happens. And boy, I tell you, it was really fascinating with some guys that, I've had lunch with over the years. They became the toughest critics with some of the nastiest commentary. It was fascinating to watch. Really, if the friendship was that shallow, it makes you wonder about the relationship. That was what was most fascinating to me in this.
Well, I can tell you, as a person who's been working in the media for 40-some-odd years, I can tell you it's pathological. Most people in the media, they can't help themselves. They automatically will turn into sharks with the slightest aura of blood in the water.
It really was something to watch, and it was from people who I really mean that I consider friends, and I mean, they just savage. They just, just out of the water and up with the jaws. Boy, I tell you, woof, I could smell them.
Senator, good talking to you. Thank you very much, sir.
Talk to you. Thank you.
Senator Alan Simpson on our newsbreaker line on WABC. He wrote a very gracious letter to the New York Times in which he says, my choice of the word sympathizer was not a good one. I wish I...